Shock, the entire video series, deals with trauma, impellant force being committed towards our body and towards our partners. We have to take the utmost care in delivering and receiving shock to our bodies. Remember that you have to remain slow and incremental in your training. It should be done under the supervision of your trainer and, of course, of your own common sense. Welcome to the Shock Video Trilogy that means to sew together your technical skill development into a cohesive strategy of effective force administration. These training companions are designed to accelerate performance in any style of martial art or combat sport, and hence are integral to the attribute development of any serious close quarters combat, defensive tactics, or sport fight trainer. We begin the Shock Video Trilogy with the first tape entitled Shock Absorption. We all know that as our energy diminishes, our performance decreases. So the key to performance enhancement is energy management. When it comes to energy, the most effective way to mismanage your energy is through fear reactivity. Now, we all know this. If someone were to grab at our groin, we're instantly going to jump away, or someone motion towards our face, we're conditioned to respond with that fearful response. If we have a means of acclimatizing ourselves to impact so that we respond only to a true threat, and the threats that are real we respond to at an appropriate level, 1 unit of response to 1 unit of force, then we're going to diminish our fear reactivity and as a result manage our energy better, and as a result of that enhance our performance. So the key to performance enhancement is shock absorption. An excellent acronym to remember fear reactivity is to take the word fear, false evidence that appears to be real. Now, throughout the course of our day, stressors in our normal life, in our work life, in our family life, they embed in our tissues. That accelerates our fear reactivity. Now, there are certain combat sports that will reinforce fear reactivity, so force absorption, getting used to shock, is going to be integral to releasing the tone that increases fear reactivity. One of the most important training tools is one called dynamic tension. Now, you can picture this as something you can do at work. We tend to keep most of our stress in our face, neck, and back. If you can, throughout the course of your day, relax your face, The number of muscles in your face, there's an old Russian saying, relax your face, you relax the body. Throughout the course of the day, you can see the facial calibration start to get constricted and taut. Relax your face and keep almost a blunt, nonchalant forehead. If you can do that, you can get rid of the tone and you'll put yourself closer into the state that you're seeking. Another effective tool for that is dynamic tension. What you're going to do is take all of the muscles in your body and constrict them at one time. Now, I don't suggest doing this out in public because it's going to look very strange. It's going to be a full body flex. This is going to release the tone, the residual tone and the residual recruitment in your tissues from stress throughout your day. This is a great preparatory exercise before any type of training. So, here we go. Up, face, fists, feet, buns, back. And then relax and let the air out. Do it 3 or 4 times where you're... If you increase the frequency in your muscular tissues, or keep on doing the exercise. If you keep on releasing the tone from your tissues, you won't have that residual recruitment that happens from stressors throughout our day. After you've worked on this dynamic tension drill, another drill that you work on is a way to agitate the tissues. The tissues, our muscles, have a certain frequency that they twitch at. So, and you see this in some elite and adroit athletes, that they'll be shaking. Concentrate on how you're shaking and what you're shaking. When you do this drill before you walk into a match or before you have a very stressful meeting even, shake out your hands, your face, agitate your body like you would in a blender. Your whole body. That agitation releases the rest of the residual tone. Now we're going to go on to a partner drill where you're going to be working on releasing the tension from the tissues. And you see this when you walk, in some of the former Soviet athletes, they'll walk into a match, they'll be pounding their muscles so that it's becoming acclimatized to the impact. Start with the face. Now be careful when you're working with your partner that you don't rip the skin off of their face, but don't, 2 directions, opposite and equal. Loosen up. Talk to your partner so that they get loose. Throughout the course of our day, we end up getting really stiff, and especially with pre-competitive anxiety, the best way to get pounded is to walk in stiff as a board. The whole body, your trainer should work with you on agitating the muscles so that the tone is loose. Both sides. And work up and down the body. The next set of drills is to coordinate the articulation in the joints so that they're loose in flow. The best way to start is to grab your partner's hand. I'll do it from this angle. Grab your partner's hand and shake it like a rug. Now, what you want to do is you want to encourage them to be as loose as possible. Once again, the emphasis here is to release the residual recruitment in the muscles from pre-competitive anxiety or any type of anxiety throughout your day. You can also do this yourself, obviously. Then move on to the leg. Your partner hands you their leg. They rest it in your hands so that it's dropped on like a dead weight. Loose back and forth, around in a circle, switching directions so that the leg is loose and supple. And then finally, you want to coordinate the rest of the body, work with the shoulders, have them work on keeping these joints loose so that you can snap free any of the residual tone. Now what we'll go on to next is the breathing. Now the breathing is going to be integral to everything that we're doing. If you remember from the breathing tape, the best way to move is not to try and breathe, but to be breathed by your movement. We're going to begin in this abdominal region. A great many of us carry a lot of fear in this area, and the residual recruitment in our abdominal wall, we tend to clench at our abdomen. We're going to start with a slow application of force as he transfers weight from the back foot to the front foot. And back off. Remember that this isn't, we're not doing abs of steel. And come on, yeah, I can take it. No. All that's going to do is fire things out both ends. What you want to do is relax and back off. As his weight transfers more and more until he's off of the posted foot and steps across. Remember to breathe. Remember to breathe, because it's the breathing that's going to give us the ability to relax. Like we said in the other tapes, the optimal performance zone is at the end of an exhalation. This doesn't matter whether it's sport fighting, grappling, shooting, archery. Everything happens at the cessation of breath. So, as he steps across, Doug here is a heavy guy. Now, don't be afraid of this force being transferred. Remember, this is your tissues being allowed to move. Go ahead. As you relax, your diaphragm can travel. Now, all of us have heard of the wind getting knocked out of us. This is not an anatomically correct statement. The wind doesn't get knocked out of us. What happens is we take impact somewhere in our body, and because of our fear reactivity, we clench. And that clenching causes abnormal information to our diaphragm force. That information is like static into our nerves, and it inhibits our involuntary respiratory reflex. We forget to breathe. If we relax, we don't take that pressure, we don't get the wind knocked out of us. Now, in other tapes, we've worked on how to engage the ground so that you don't receive impact. We're now working this in our particular body positions. So we work from the walking across to a 1 foot hop and all the way around. And now I'll hop over. It's just as simple. It's just as simple. This is just another force being added to our body. And we'll work up to 2 feet so that he has a nice little skip. Simple. Work on your breathing. Respiration is everything. You're relaxed. You're not tense. This is easy. The more that you can relax, the less fear reactivity you're going to have in your body. Now, you can do this incorrectly, and it can be a danger to you. If you make yourself more fear reactive, and you're tense and afraid of this force, that's going to reinforce your own fear reactivity. So what you need to do is, when you're working with your partner, make this incremental, slowly progressive. If your partner becomes stressed out, then you're going too fast. You don't want to reinforce their own fear. Work up slowly, nice little hop. Until increasingly you become more and more comfortable. And then you can add in amplitude and put it right over here. And step down first. 1 step first. And now a little hop off. And you increase more and more. Go ahead. Until the impact becomes significant, but it's not stressing you out. Remember, this is all fear reactivity. The currency of our performance enhancement is fear reactivity and diminishing that fear. This drill is equally important and especially integral to all of you wrestlers and grapplers out there, and those of you interested in self-defense in general. Your partner now steps and stands. Now, you can balance your partner by giving them a foot or a hand, but they're working on their balance too. Relax. Now, you're going to be working to keep your limbs in flow around. This way, your organs are flowing and they're moving around the impellent force that's being applied to your abdominal wall. if any of you have been in a situation where you have a huge amount of weight on top of you, it can be a scary event. But as you relax, you realize that the muscles can distribute the force. It's not, relax. Okay, now when we stand up, we're going to be working on this flow back with our joints. We're going to go through a joint study in that each application of force is going to be responded to with, so that no matter where he places force on us, our body is going to be responding. Keep going. Their hip. Inside, thigh, knee. Other knee. And we'll work back and forth so that you and your partner are both working on this. You see that Doug and I are working slowly to begin. There's no reason to add in sudden impact at first. This is incremental development. You don't want to reinforce their reactivity. It's going to encourage him to be more fear reactive. This is attribute development, not skill acquisition. We're trying to work together with our partner so that as we get more and more comfortable with each other, we're still having the same amount of response, equitable force distribution, no matter where it is in our body. Start with the shoulders, work into the abdomen and pelvis, into the thigh and knee, and then down into the ankle, so that this ability to feel comfortable, mobily secure, is integral to any stand-up or grappling game, any means of defending ourselves. Most of us feel off balance. You're always in balance. You're always in balance. Your ability to relax is what's going to keep you on your feet. Now, you can work on this in one of our future tapes on joint articulation and mobility, but you remember this drill was partially introduced in the breathing tape that this is where you're coordinating your movement, your alignment, and your respiration. Now, we're going to work this together when we come in with impellent force that is approaching. Now, we've just had this huge monster standing on us, all of this massive weight standing on our abdomen. His little tiny paw is nothing compared to all of this. Okay? Now remember that. It's in proportion. I don't care how strong this is, it's not going to equal how big that is. Okay. Now we're going to work on the same drill, and we're going to start with, first, a light amount of application. A little bit more. A little bit more. Remember, it's incremental. Now, notice, it's not, come on. Come on. If you tense up, what's going to happen is your muscular contraction is going to allow no room for your diaphragm to travel, no room for your organs to travel. We've seen much too many in sports. Ruptures of pancreas, ruptures of the liver, ruptures of the kidneys because of fear reactivity, that tension caused in the muscles. Think of this as most of you in law enforcement know this right away. Who gets injured in an automobile accident? The sober person or the drunk person? Of course, the sober person, because the drunk person bounces around the cabin. Now, I'm not encouraging you to drink through your training, but what I am saying is to stay relaxed and work on diminishing your fear reactivity. When this impellent force, so that when it comes, you can absorb this force easily because you're allowing your organs to travel. It's nothing compared to all of that weight standing on our stomach. Now, it also, not just this dropping, but straight in. Dropping, it looks like the body can move at an angle away. The same hollowing out comes backwards. This is our instinctual response, and upon which you can sew in your individual skills. When we talk of shock absorption, we're not saying that if you're attacked, you can do nothing to me. I'm impervious. That's not that drill. You're not impervious. You're not invulnerable. That's not what this is for. This is not a skill like we were saying at the beginning. This is an attribute. If you diminish your fear, you're going to have the presence of mind to apply your individual skills from whatever style that you happen to be studying. If you're fear reactive and he motions towards your stomach, you may not, and you probably won't, have access to your fighting skill. That's what happens to us when we just train in the particular techniques of our style and not in actual force play, where we're actually absorbing force. This shock absorption is our means to have access to our individual fighting skills. So dropping, inserting linear, in rounds, the force is still going to be absorbed and you're going to collapse and move underneath its application. The same thing is going to be true when a foot is impelling. Back up a little so you can give me some juice. That's a lot of kick. But remember, this is incremental development. He can apply all the force he wants. Our job is to diminish our fear to its approach. Remember, false evidence that appears to be real. Fear. False evidence that appears to be real. Is this a true threat? If it is a true threat, how much of a threat is it? We can respond with our individual techniques once we have the wherewithal to know exactly how much force he's going to be applying so that we can respond just as much as necessary. Efficiency over effort. A few more examples of taking your individual skills and working them towards force or shock absorption would be the impellant force from a kick from the side to absorb that so that you become less reactive to that chamber. When you know that chamber is beginning, you're more able to respond to it rather than it's coming. So you get tense up. And if you're tense here and you do receive a blast, that's when you're going to have the wind knocked out of you. The same thing from a kick coming around to the side. If you stand here and try and take it or fearfully avoid it, that's when you're really going to get hurt. You'll break an arm. Relax into it so that you're not taking any injurious impact from it. Okay? And the last, some of you wrestlers know this. A gut wrench, you can make someone pass out some of you have read one of the articles I wrote on the myth of strangulation. That strangulation is from the Valsalva maneuver. And that is when someone gets fearful, they cause an overmobilization of their chemical cocktail inside of them. That causes them to pass out. If they get fearful and you grab them, you ever do this as kids? Make somebody breathe out and then you squeeze as hard as you can and they pass out? Well, that's what a gut wrench can do to you. If you breathe out, and you can really clench here. Now, Doug is holding in his breath and is not breathing. That can make him red and a little dizzy from this gut wrench, and this is a way to relax if you're in a grappling game. Go ahead. There's not much he can do. He can't lift you because you're dead weight. Dead weight. If you're tense, what happens? Go ahead. He lifts you right off the ground because you're one solid object. But relaxed, go ahead. You're super heavy, okay? That leads into your technical skills, especially for grappling. Because of your ability to relax, you're more able to move. We'll go on to more of that on a future tape. Those of you that are involved in any type of firearms training know that the most difficult place to move is center mass. So if you can move around impellant force from center mass, this is one of the most functional ways to teach yourself this attribute and to lessen your fear reactivity. So taking this strike away from the abdominal wall and up into this armor casing, if you can move this bodily armor through your joint articulation, you'll be able to move any spot on your body. We'll start with the straight impellant. Remember, incremental force, thank you. And then slowly increase the force. So that you're collapsing underneath the force, and notice that it's hollowing out and you're not getting tightened from it. If you get tight here and you fixate, when you take a shot, it's really going to embed the shock. Now, some of you know that you can snap back and deposit a great deal of force, or you can follow through and deposit equally an amount of force. If there's not a resistant object, you cannot put the force in it. If you hit a wall, now the wall's stronger than your hand's going to explode. But if you hit something softer, you can deposit the force. But if it's not there, there's nothing that he can do to deposit it. Now, overhand. Same thing. Remember, we're not doing this for tricks at parties. Look, Mom, I can get the hit as hard as I can. It's impressive, but remember that this isn't a self-defense skill. This is an attribute that we're developing to apply to any particular style or combat sport that we're working on. So even if it were boxing, it's not so that we can take shots, but so that we diminish the fear and then have the wherewithal to respond. If we know that impellant force is coming because we're not having a fearful reaction to it, go ahead. We know where its root is coming from. We have the wherewithal, the presence of mind to extrapolate where it's coming from. In future, in the other sections of this series, we're going to be talking about how to preempt that approaching impellant force because we're not fearful to it. We don't have a reaction to it. If he draws back, we don't have this reflex action anymore. We know exactly what his body's going to do. When we get too caught up in our technical game, we forget that what we're dealing with is force. What happens in our body when we receive an impact is there's a neuromuscular excitation. You've excited the muscle, and there's a nervous communication throughout the body. If you pinch someone, they have a reaction throughout their whole body, and Doug doesn't like that very much. I don't like it either. That neuromuscular excitation is what we're dealing with and what we're addressing. Pain and the fear reactivity from the pain. Pain does hurt, but we don't need the extreme fear reactivity that causes injury. Okay? There's a difference between pain and injury, and that's what we're dealing with. We're going to start with this drill. I can't stress this enough. When you're working on this drill, do not aim your fingers at your partner's eyes because you'll miss. You'll fatigue and you'll accidentally jam your fingers through their skull. Aim your fingers towards their forehead and your finger pads, not the tips of your fingers, especially those with fingernails. Aim them towards the forehead. When you do this, what you want to do is relax the blink reflex. How many times have you gotten hit when your eyes were closed? How many times? Most of us. How many times have you gotten thrown when you're in mid-blink? That's when it happens, when we're not paying attention. So you relax as those fingers are coming in. Relax the face, like we talked about at the beginning, so your blink reflex doesn't engage. Have you ever been to the eye doctor and they shoot that parcel of air right into your eye? It's almost impossible to stop from blinking. When you can stop from blinking then you call me and we're going to put that on a future tape. But for now, what I want you to do is I want you to work on this exercise of relaxing the entire face. Remember, the facial calibration determines our state. So relax the face and let that impellant force slowly increase until you see that Doug is now touching my face. That touching causes excitation in the facial muscles. When we get hit, I've seen, it's very unfortunate, but I've seen so many people that have been in martial art for many, many years who have never been hit. The first time they're hit, it's usually from something stupid like, and then they have no access to their fighting skills. None. Because of that emotional freezing that happens from impact. That's why shock absorption is so critical. And we get into, now from touching to slowly slapping. Once again, stay away from the eyes. Stay away from the eyes. Cut your fingernails. When that's slapping, work once again so that the blink reflex isn't kicking in, and so that you're not wincing or grimacing. If you start to, you're reinforcing the fear reactivity. You have to stay loose. How many times have you seen these elite and adroit athletes step onto the mat? They start slapping their muscles. Why is this? Neuromuscular excitation. They're acclimatizing themselves to force impact. If you walk into a fight cold, for instance, and you've had no shock absorption training, what happens is the first time you receive impact, you're frozen stiff. And it is a great tactic that criminals use on us. Any belligerent knows that he has to engage your mind and body. You know, hey, buddy, got a match? Your mind's engaged. Slap. Now it comes. The same thing in sport. If he can engage our bodies and trick us into a movement, he moves one direction, then he goes the other direction. That neuromuscular excitation that tricks us, that feints us, is what we're dealing with. When we remove that fear through one particular drill. Now, Doug's being nice. You can really start to increase this impact. Okay? But remember, stay away from the eyes, and incremental development. If you walk up to someone cold and this is their first exposure to attribute development and slap them silly, you're going to reinforce their fear reactivity. One of the things that I can't reinforce enough is that when you're working on shock absorption to the cranium, that you'll understand that this impellant force is being absorbed by the brain, which is free-floating. I'll change that. When you hit the head, what happens is there's a reciprocal motion in a free-floating brain. When you hit the head, the brain slams against the other side. This causes brain damage. Now, when we were bare-knuckled, what happened was we weren't dumb enough to hit the head. We wouldn't hit the head because of breaking our own hand. But now with hyper-equipment, we pummel the head into senselessness and we cause so much brain trauma. So what we need to do is we need to work on absorbing force in this free-floating armor casing. We'll start off slowly. When you're working with bare knuckles, remember that you have to start off incremental. I don't care if you're wearing pads. Be incremental. The first force is going to be around to the chin here. If you keep your head fixated on your neck, go ahead. This is the best way to knock yourself unconscious. Here. Knockout comes from the fear reactivity of going back into the force. If you collapse and fold underneath the force, then you absorbed it and allowed it to travel. One more time. Here, and you can continue your game. But once again, this requires you to get acclimated towards force impact on your head. But it has to be incremental when you're working on the brain. Even the slightest nudge, when you hit that armor casing, if it causes a reciprocal snapback, you're going to be causing brain trauma. So remember, incremental, slow, 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 as the person develops this and reclaims this attribute of flowing into a strike. Then they can continue their game. Okay? Then you can work on your individual techniques. You can work on accessing your particular fighting skills. On a straight punch, you still have to absorb down into it. If your chin's sticking out like a doorknob, you're going to get knocked unconscious. Your mandible will shove back and break off. Down. Flow into the force. Follow and chase, so that your head is free-floating. Now, we see this a lot with experienced boxers. They've become very adept at keeping that neck mobility, right? And they can move around. But what happens is when we're not used to this force, go ahead, we take it and absorb it. You need to move around, move into the force, collapse and fold over it. We're going to work next on a concept of bodily armoring. All right. In bodily armoring, we're going to take and expel all the air from our lungs. So we're at that full exhalation point. And remember, the optimal performance zone happens at the end of exhalation, irrespective of sport, irrespective of any sport. Optimal performance zone is at the end of exhalation. So we'll work from here, from absorbing blows. We'll start with a blow to the back and side. Remember, if you have an anticipatory grimace where you're reacting coming into the force, you're reinforcing that fear reactivity. You will decrease your amount of wherewithal to respond with your individual skills. Relax. Relax. Go ahead. Come on. You're loose. Go ahead. Same thing. What we're going to do is we're going to work from the front. Okay. Relax. And remember, the shin is coming across the arms. Don't kick each other in the face. Don't kick each other in the joints. Don't spike each other. Look for ways to embed force without doing trauma to the body. Injurious trauma. Or you're not trying to cause injuries to your partner. You're trying to give them increasing levels of force so that they can respond by relaxing. Relaxing. Relaxed each time. Now, it can lend the impression when you say armoring that you're going to, I wish I could make sound effects with my body, but you're not tight, you're loose. Loose. Now what happens is, can you start with this again? What happens is when you're loose, you can respond because you see the trajectory incoming. If you don't, if you're fear reactive, then what happens is, my visual stimulus goes to my brain. My brain has to tell my muscles to respond. That's a long travel route. But if the cue is the same because I'm relaxed, all it has to be is muscle, spine, muscle. You're relaxed. You can move into the force. Here, come in closer. You can move into the force just the same as it comes in because you're used to. You're used to that impellant force. You're used to remaining loose. So you can relax. You're not afraid of that incoming force. Fear is the biggest detriment to all of our training. It doesn't matter what sport, it doesn't matter any style of martial art. Your ability to control and manage your own fear reactivity is the crux and cornerstone of your ability to access your fighting skills. All right, this is the wrap-up then for shock absorption. This does not mean, once having watched this, that we now have these new skills of shock absorption, because they aren't skills. They're attribute development that you cultivate over the course of your training, over years and years and years. You never stop acquiring this delicate attribute because you become more and more sensitive to it. And that's what the future tapes, the other two tapes in this series, comprise. The next tape, shock inoculation. Once you're aware of, you have the presence of mind because you're no longer fearful of that impellant force. You know how it's coming in. Your natural reaction is to collapse and fold over it. So we'll be talking about how, we're going to talk about how to move around and make that harmless from a natural reaction because we've already removed the target. Now, once it's out of the way, we're also going to take that force, and we're going to use that against him. And we've heard this many times. But in the last tape, we talk about shock engineering, how to engineer trauma into his body using his force, using positions of mechanical advantage so that we take and use our body and his force, use his force against him. So we'll see that in future tapes, in the next 2 tapes in this series.